experiences as a leader within and without the Art of Living Foundation in the nonprofit sector, as well as the executive sector as well. So welcome, Rashmi.
Thank you, Gisette. What a beautiful welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I just, I guess I'll just dive right in. I know you've been an inspiration to many, and myself included. So I would love to just kind of pick your brain a little bit. Especially, maybe we could start a little bit with how you kind of got into this, world of meditation, and how does that sort of intersect for you with leadership?
Gisette, it's a very interesting story how I got into meditation. I was Googling about Feng Shui and I came across the Art of Living program saying there was a Feng Shui program. And so that's how I signed up for the program. And when I went to the course, the teacher was sitting on the sofa. And when I looked at her, she looked like the epitome of peace. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if I could even have like a quarter of what she has, I'll be happy.
Mm.
And that's how I got started. And, at the end of the program, she put out a challenge. She said, do this practice for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or a year. And I've always been an overachiever. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it for a year. And when I started doing the program, I saw there was such a huge shift in myself. And then, when you ask me about leadership, I mean, I think the thing which is most essential for a leader to be successful is to be in the moment
Mm.
because decisions need to be made in the moment. And, so to be able to make decisions with clarity, that's what the practices have done for me. And I noticed that in not just leadership, in every aspect of my life. But what I really, really have enjoyed about the Art of Living program, and I always say this as a joke, my cheeks always hurt because I'm smiling all the time. And that's what the practices have done for me.
Very nice. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I know today, leadership, there's a lot of focus about purpose and finding our true purpose in life. And I know you were just you weren't necessarily looking for a life purpose when you were Googling feng shui, but did you feel like it brought some purpose to your life that maybe you weren't expecting, or how did it play into that?
Actually, you know what? What's so funny? I was looking for purpose. I was looking for 6 years and I went to many different programs, but nothing seemed to stick. And then I came across the Art of Living program, and Gurudev was coming 2 months later for a silence program, just like how we're going to have at Guru Purnima right now. But that time it was his birthday. And I'm sure you remember, you've been around a long time. We used to have them at the Ricky's Hyatt in Palo Alto. And so when you go to the silence course, there's these baskets where you put in your question and Gurudev answers the question every session. That time there were not that many people. I think our silence course was about 300 plus people. So everybody's questions were getting answered. And every session I would put a question in. And that question never got answered. And so then Gurudev left, but his flight got canceled. So he came back to the session on the last day. And he picked up the question basket and then he put the basket away and he says, you know what, just stand up and ask. And I was sitting right in the front. So I stood up right away. I raised my hand and he motioned towards me and he said, sure, go ahead. And I asked him, I said, Gurudev, what is the purpose of my life? And that was a question I had been asking every session, hoping that it would get answered. And he just looked at me and he laughed and he said, I don't know about you, but I just came here to party. The whole hall started laughing and I was like, what? Seriously? Like this is the person who's supposed to, give me all the answers. And I think I must have looked like really mad. And I just kept looking at him and he kept motioning me to sit down and I refused to sit down. So then he looked at me, and our eyes met. And he said, if you really want to know, come join me. And that was when I decided to become a teacher. I don't know if I found my purpose or not, but one thing I can tell you is that I jump out of bed every day happy to jump and dive into the day. So maybe that's been my purpose, to be happy and, you know, be thrilled about life.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful purpose, just to be happy. Yeah, and to be
Absolutely.
helping others and whatnot. Um, a lot of times people talk about these types of coincidences, and with Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, who's the founder of the Art of Living Foundation, I've heard a lot of people say that in his presence, they feel like he's answering their questions specifically. They notice these types of coincidences more often. Do you find that?
Finding like coincidences.
Yeah, do you find that that's more prominent, or like, do you think you're maybe just noticing it more, having more awareness, or do you think that there's actually more coincidences sort of happening? Do you feel like there's more of a flow happening in life when you're sort of doing these meditation practices or in his presence?
I think yes to both. I mean, ever since I started doing the practices, I, if you want to call them coincidences, I started noticing the coincidences, or if you want to call them miracles, I started noticing miracles. But what I did find that my life was shifting for the better. In fact, after meditating for a few years, I remember going back to a college reunion, and none of my friends could believe that I was a meditation teacher because I had changed so much. So it brought a huge difference into my life. And as far as being in Gurudev's presence, I brought my teenage sons to one of the Guru Purnimas, and they were about 14 years old, and they didn't want to come. 14-year-old kids, they didn't want to come. But I told them, I said, just do it for me, just this once, come for me. And they did the Yes program, and they also had a chance to meet with Gurudev. And one of my sons, he was very quiet. And so I asked him, I said, how was it meeting Gurudev? And he says, it was kind of weird. And so I just kept quiet, thinking, okay, but then, curiosity gets the better of you, right? So then I poked him a little bit. I'm like, what do you mean better? I mean, what do you mean weird? And he says, Mom, I've never felt like this before. I'm not able to pinpoint it. And so I said, what do you mean? He says, I just felt being in a circle of love.
Mm.
And that was from someone who was so skeptical. He was actually trying to save me and tell me that I don't think you should be doing this. So it was incredible. So that's what I mean. I've been doing the practices, so I'm always a little partial and a little biased towards him. But for him to say that, that was like huge.
Yeah, the teenagers are definitely very skeptical. I remember when I was a teenager, my mom would always try out these different programs, and we were in LA in the middle of sort of the new age movement, and she took me to all these different, crystal healers and different workshops and affirmations. And I remember, I also got involved with meditation, and it was sort of like the only thing I didn't hate. And so that says a lot as a teenager if you actually like something.
Oh,
Um,
but let me interrupt you for a minute. Just that, you said you've been around for a while. And in fact, you have been one of the people that I've always kind of admired and looked up to. Like, whenever I see you, you're always so calm and so peaceful and so uh, put together, like in every aspect. Why don't you just share a little bit about? I know you've known Gurudev from the beginning, like he was your part one teacher.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd love to share more, but yeah, let's stay on track here. Talking about you, Rashmi. Um, but yeah, over the years, I think like you, I've also noticed these sort of coincidences and different things like that. And maybe they're not huge miracles. Um, I'll share one story. when I first met Gurudev, people used to mispronounce my name and they used to say Josette all the time. And I would correct them and I would say Josette. So when a friend of mine introduced me to him, he said, "This is Josette." And Gurudev actually corrected him and he said, "No, no, it's Josette." And that was my first introduction to him. And it was sort of just like one of those little things that makes people feel like they know you. And I think that's an experience I've always had with Gurudev, is this feeling of like, oh, he knows me. He cares. It's sort of like what maybe your son was talking about with that circle of love.
Beautiful.
But yeah, a lot of people when they think of somebody who's sort of evolved or enlightened or whatever you want to call it, Gurudev has been kind of in that space where people think of him as enlightened, as evolved, and he's teaching many people. And of course, he's teaching us to teach others as well. But one thing people look for when they're looking to somebody to sort of when they're skeptical or sort of to check if somebody's in that state for real is have they done any miracles, and is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share that you would characterize maybe as a little bit of a miracle or it's like a fun story?
I have many, but I'll tell you one which happened very recently during WCF, World Culture Festival that we had in Washington, D.C. And I was one of the leads for hospitality and volunteer care. And we were feeding all the volunteers and getting food out to everybody who was working on the program. We also had, Order Living had these food stalls, but for some reason they got shut down by 6:30, and the program was going to go on till like 9 or 9:30.
Mm.
And that day, that was Saturday, and that was the day we had the highest attendance, and there were close to 1 million people over there. There was no food, and if you wanted food, you had to walk down a block to the
Mm.
food trucks. And so, uh, but we started getting people who had come to attend the event to our tents asking us for food. So now, my co-lead and I, we decided we should not say no to anyone because, you don't say no to food, right? But we had ordered only a certain amount of food, which was for the volunteers. So anyway, so I go to the caterer and I tell him, I said, pack smaller amounts so that we can extend the food. And so he says, see that big sign that shows my business. He's like, I don't want to serve anyone less food.
Mm.
And so I explained the situation to him, and he was like, no, Rashmi, I don't think we should serve less food. So I said, okay, whatever. I said, how many people's worth of food do we have? And he said, for 800. I'm like, okay. And so, we had made a human chain and, we were serving and passing the food along. And then I go to him after 45 minutes because a lot of people had been coming. And I tell him, I said, how many people, how many more boxes can we make? And then he comes back to me and he says, looks like we can do 1,000. And so I tell him, I said, you just told me we had food, about 800, enough food to feed 800 people. He's like, maybe I miscounted. I'm like, okay, great. So, and then we keep serving food. And then I go back to him again after 15, 20 minutes. And I say, how many more people can we serve? He's like, definitely 1,000 more.
Wow.
And we just went on, just said, we fed like 5,000 people that day. And then it was 11 o'clock. The event had finished and, nearly everybody had gone. And we were tired. We were exhausted. And the miracle is that he had empty boxes. And I mean, if he wouldn't have had extra boxes, we wouldn't have even be able to feed everyone. Somehow the boxes appeared. And then at the end of the night, we had tons of food left over.
Wow.
And nobody till date knows. I mean, of course, we know where the food came from. But that day, we just thought that, okay, we're going to feed everybody. And we just said, Gurudev, please help us out today. And we ended up feeding over 5,000 people that day.
Wow, that sounds that really amazing, power of intention, and it sounds like a miracle to me, being able to feed all
Definitely
people.
is. Because we had ordered food only for 1,500 people. We had ordered food for 2,500 and 1,000 boxes we had already sent off. So we had food only for 1,500 people.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Rashmi, I have one last question for you, which
Sure.
is, how many years have you been training teachers in Art of Living?
For 8 years.
Wow. Okay. So, and you've been really consistent doing that. Um, can you share a story from just your own experience in training teachers that maybe was inspiring or just, fun, or just something, maybe a memory or a moment that just stands out for you? Maybe a highlight.
You know, uh, nothing is really coming to mind, but one thing that always stands out for me is the transformation. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So every, like, so this is something when I went to teacher training, and, Mikey was my teacher trainer, and, uh, and then the next, we had TTC 1 and TTC 2, and then the following year was Janelle and Swami Sukh Chaitanya, no, Sukhi, Swami Sukhi. And, they came back and they said, oh, Gurudev said that you could be a teacher. And, Gurudev said this and that. And I was thinking they're just saying it for the sake of saying it, right? But then when I became a teacher trainer, I remember being on a call with him and he telling us that there's this person sitting in the back. The person is holding back, you know and then he gave us certain instructions of what to do, and that changed the TTC for them, and things began to move for that person. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is incredible how his attention, no matter where he is in the world, his attention is on every single person. We've all heard him say that, each one of you is like a hair on my head.
Mhm.
And when you feel pain, I feel the pain. It's just like, if you take just one strand of your hair and you pull it, it hurts, right? And the beautiful thing is that he, no matter where he is, he knows exactly what is going on.
Mhm.
And he will give us instructions on what to do and what not to do. Until today, I'm amazed. And then when the pandemic came, we always thought that TTC worked because it was in person. You're there and the sangha, and you're looking at people and you know what's going on. And then when the pandemic came, he kind of just amped it up. Not only did we just go online, but I remember teaching TTC after TTC, like nearly every 3 months, we were teaching a TTC. And what was so incredible, Josette, was that the experience for the participants and for the trainers was the same. It didn't matter whether we were looking. See, when you're sitting in a room with people, you know exactly what's going on in another person's mind. But when you're sitting in front of a screen, you're just looking at a box.
Mhm.
But his grace is so incredible, so powerful, that we didn't skip a beat. And that is the magic or mystery, or I don't know what you want to call, about Gurudev Sri Shankar. And I think that's why whenever you get an opportunity, no one should miss an opportunity to be with him, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Now, will you be going to, I know there's a big celebration called Guru Purnima coming up. Will you be attending that and
You
seeing?
know, just said, we are so lucky. I am so lucky. I have never, we've been lucky because we've always had good, since came into our, since I started practicing, we've always had Guru Purnima in the US, other, sorry, 1 minute, other than 1 year. And I have gone to every Guru Purnima. I can't even think of missing Guru Purnima, because one thing that Gurudev always says, that Guru Purnima is the day of the seeker. And that's the day when you take stock of and you look at how much you have grown. And for me, it's also a day to give thanks and to be grateful to all my teachers who have helped me come and be a part of my journey for the past years. So, yes, long answer to a very short question. Yes, I'm going to be there.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will see you there. And thank you so much, Rashmi, for taking this time out. Love to hear your stories. I look forward to hearing more. And yeah, hopefully I will see you soon.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I'm not going to let you go so soon. One good story from you.
One good story. Okay. Let's see. Nothing's coming to mind, but any topic that you're specifically
Okay, can I ask you a question?
sure, sure.
Just said you've been meditating, you said since you were a teenager. You still look like a teenager, but I know you're not a teenager because I've known you 23 years.
Yeah.
So what has kept you on the path for so long?
Hmm. I think the path is sort of like something that it's like it holds us. It's like there's something holding us. And I never really knew that, in the early days. But whenever I would sort of drift away, somebody would always pull me back, just there was always somebody who would call. There's probably so many people who have been a part of my journey. And something would just always draw me back. And it's not anything I could even attribute to like a person because it's really like the path itself. It's sort of like the path itself is like holding us and, you know, keeping us there, even when we feel like we're not on it, or even when we feel separate, you know. Okay, I'll share one story that comes to mind. I was in India this past year for this big celebration, which you probably know of, Navratri. And Navratri is so popular in India that lots of people attend. And the hall, the meditation hall, which is huge, is still not big enough to hold everybody. And so people used to sit like, outside of the hall, and it was just sort of a roof and then people sitting all around. But last year they had finally built walls to, contain the hall so that like weather and everything, people wouldn't be affected. But the people who would come, who used to sit like outside of the hall because there wasn't enough room, were now sitting behind the wall. And so one evening, Gurudev made the comment, he said, for those of you who are sitting behind the wall, I know you're there. And I'm sending you double blessings. And he said, double blessings for everybody behind the wall. And every now and then I think of this phrase, like it comes back to me, double blessings for people behind the wall, that, we talk about belonging on the course, but all of us have moments when we don't feel like we belong. Even the most senior teacher maybe at times feels like, I don't belong, I don't fit in. I've gone through that. But then I remember this thing, it's like this path, it's always bringing us back. And it's like Gurudev, the story you shared, he knew that somebody in the back of the room was holding back. And it's one of those things. It doesn't matter where you're sitting. It doesn't matter like what walls are there, whether they're in our mind. Um, we're there, like he says, we're on that conveyor belt and we're just kind of moving. The path is moving us. So it's not like anything we have to do. So there's nothing I've certainly done to stay on it. It's just sort of moved me along. So yeah, that's my sharing.
That's beautiful, you said.
Okay.
Beautiful. It was wonderful spending time with you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to see you on.